You do not have a motivation problem. You have a truth problem. Because deep down, you already know what you should be doing. You know you should sleep earlier. You know you should stop wasting hours scrolling. You know you should train your body, clean your room, finish the project, answer the message, start the work, fix the habit, have the hard conversation. But something strange happens. You watch one powerful video. You feel alive for 10 minutes. You imagine a new life. You tell yourself, this time, I'm serious. Then tomorrow comes. And the same person wakes up in the same bed, reaches for the same phone, repeats the same pattern, and quietly hates themselves for it. That is the dark truth about motivation nobody tells beginners. Motivation is not fake. But it is fragile. It can start the engine. It cannot drive the car for you. And if you build your life around feeling motivated, your life will only move when your emotions give you permission. That is a dangerous way to live. Most beginners think motivation is the beginning of change. But often, motivation is just the emotional high you feel after imagining change without paying the price of it. It feels like progress because your brain gets to taste the identity without earning it. For a moment, you feel disciplined. You feel powerful. You feel like the kind of person who wakes up early, works in silence, stays focused, gets respected, and proves people wrong. But nothing has actually changed yet. You only borrowed the feeling of becoming that person. And the brain loves borrowed feelings. It loves easy rewards. It loves the fantasy of success more than the boredom of building it. That is why motivation can become addictive. Not because it helps you act, but because it lets you feel transformed without transforming. This is why some people watch self-improvement content for years and their life still looks exactly the same. They are not lazy in the obvious way. They are emotionally active. Mentally busy. Always planning. Always learning. Always restarting. But rarely finishing. They collect advice like it is progress. They confuse intensity with consistency. They confuse inspiration with identity. And slowly, they become addicted to the feeling of beginning again. That is the trap. Beginners love new beginnings because new beginnings do not expose them. The first day at the gym feels exciting. The first page of the journal feels clean. The first hour of studying feels meaningful. The first week of discipline feels like a movie. But then comes the part nobody posts about. The boring day. The tired day. The day you do the right thing and nobody claps. The day your emotions are flat. The day your old habits call your name. The day your mind whispers, maybe tomorrow. This is where most people lose. Not because they are weak, but because they were trained to expect change to feel inspiring. Real change often feels uncomfortable, quiet, and repetitive. It does not always feel like power. Sometimes it feels like frustration. Sometimes it feels like loneliness. Sometimes it feels like sitting at your desk with no excitement, doing the work anyway. And that is why beginners misunderstand motivation. They think motivation is the fuel. But real fuel is identity. Motivation says, I feel like doing this. Identity says, this is who I am, even when I do not feel like it. That difference is everything. A person who depends on motivation asks, do I feel ready? A person with identity asks, what would someone like me do right now? One waits for emotion. The other follows a standard. And the brutal truth is this. Your life is not shaped by what you occasionally feel motivated to do. It is shaped by what you repeatedly do when motivation disappears. That is where self-respect is built. Not in the loud moments. Not in the inspirational moments. But in the private moments where nobody sees you choosing not to betray yourself. Think about the person who says they want confidence. They watch videos about body language, eye contact, social skills, charisma, and respect. They feel motivated. But then they avoid the conversation. They stay silent when they should speak. They apologize for existing. They laugh at disrespect because they do not want conflict. And later, they wonder why confidence is not growing. Confidence does not come from understanding confidence. It comes from keeping promises to yourself in situations that make you uncomfortable. Every time you avoid the action, your brain records it. Not as a dramatic failure. Just as evidence. Evidence that you cannot trust yourself yet. But every time you do the difficult thing anyway, even badly, your brain records that too. Evidence that you are becoming someone different. This is why discipline is not punishment. Discipline is repair. It repairs the relationship between you and yourself. Most people think discipline means forcing yourself like a machine. But healthy discipline is not self-hatred. It is self-respect with structure. It is saying, I will not abandon myself just because I feel uncomfortable. That sentence can change a life. Because comfort is one of the most misunderstood forces in human behavior. Comfort feels safe. But too much comfort makes you fragile. It lowers your tolerance for effort. It makes small problems feel huge. It makes basic responsibility feel like suffering. It convinces you that stress means something is wrong, when sometimes stress simply means you are stretching. The comfort zone is not evil. You need rest. You need peace. You need recovery. But if comfort becomes your master, it quietly steals your strength. It teaches you to run from discomfort before you even understand it. And then one day, you do not just avoid hard work. You avoid honest conversations. You avoid commitment. You avoid risk. You avoid responsibility. You avoid the version of yourself that requires effort. That is how people become trapped. Not by one huge failure. But by thousands of small escapes. One skipped workout. One delayed decision. One more hour scrolling. One more excuse. One more promise broken in silence. And nobody notices at first. Your life does not collapse dramatically. It shrinks quietly. Your standards become smaller. Your confidence becomes weaker. Your dreams become less believable. Your self-respect becomes harder to feel. Then you start calling it being realistic. But sometimes what people call realistic is just fear wearing adult clothing. Fear says, what if I fail? Fear says, what if they judge me? Fear says, what if I am not special? Fear says, what if I try and still lose? So motivation gives you a temporary escape from fear. It lets you imagine the victory without facing the risk. But growth demands something deeper. It demands that you act while fear is still in the room. Not after fear leaves. Because fear may not leave first. Confidence may not arrive first. Clarity may not arrive first. The perfect mood may not arrive first. Sometimes action comes first. And the feeling follows later. This is one of the most important shifts a beginner can make. Stop waiting to feel ready. Ready is often a reward, not a requirement. You become ready by doing the uncomfortable thing enough times that your nervous system stops treating it like danger. The first hard conversation feels terrifying. The 10th one feels possible. The first day without the old habit feels strange. The 10th one feels cleaner. The first focused work session feels painful. The 10th one feels normal. This is how identity is built. Not through emotion. Through repetition. Through evidence. Through small acts that prove to your own mind, I am not the person I used to be. And you do not need to change your whole life today. That is another beginner mistake. They get motivated and try to rebuild everything overnight. Wake up at 5. Work out for 2 hours. Quit sugar. Read 50 pages. Start a business. Meditate. Journal. Fix their social life. Become fearless by Friday. That looks ambitious. But often, it is emotional overcorrection. A person hates where they are, so they create an extreme plan to escape the shame. But shame is a terrible architect. It builds plans that look impressive and collapse quickly. Real change is smaller, calmer, and more honest. Choose one promise you can keep. Not a fantasy promise. A real one. 10 minutes of focused work. A walk after dinner. No phone for the first 20 minutes of the morning. One honest message you have been avoiding. One page written. One difficult task done before entertainment. Then keep that promise. Not because it is impressive. Because it is evidence. And evidence is stronger than hype. When your brain sees you keeping promises, something begins to shift. You start respecting yourself. And when you respect yourself, your behavior changes naturally. You stop chasing approval so desperately. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop needing everyone to clap before you continue. You stop living like your mood is the boss. This is where real confidence begins. Not loud confidence. Not arrogant confidence. Quiet confidence. The kind that does not need to announce itself. The kind that comes from knowing you can face discomfort and not run. But there is another dark truth. Sometimes people do not stay stuck because they lack motivation. They stay stuck because weakness gives them a hidden benefit. That sounds harsh. But be honest. If you never try seriously, you never have to know how good you could have been. If you keep saying, "I will start soon," you can protect the fantasy that your future self is powerful. If you blame circumstances for everything, you do not have to face the parts of your life that are still in your control. Weakness can become an identity. Painful, but familiar. And human beings often choose familiar pain over unfamiliar responsibility. That is not because people are stupid. It is because responsibility removes excuses. Once you admit you have power, you also have pressure. You cannot hide behind confusion forever. You cannot keep saying you do not know what to do when the first step is obvious. Maybe not the whole path. But the first step. Clean the space. Make the call. Set the boundary. Start the work. Tell the truth. Delete the distraction. Apologize where needed. Walk away where necessary. Begin badly. But begin. This is where life starts to change. Not when you feel inspired. Not when everything is perfect. Not when people finally understand you. Life starts to change when you stop negotiating with the part of you that wants comfort more than freedom. Because freedom is not doing whatever you feel like. That is often slavery to impulse. Real freedom is being able to choose what matters even when your emotions pull you somewhere else. That is discipline. That is maturity. That is self-respect. And it is not built in public. It is built in the moments when quitting would be easy and understandable. The moment you are tired but still show up. The moment you are anxious but still speak. The moment you are tempted but still choose the future. The moment nobody would know if you failed, but you would know. That is the moment that counts. And here is the hopeful part. You do not need endless motivation. You need a standard. A standard is quieter than motivation. Less exciting. Less dramatic. But far more powerful. A standard says, "This is what I do." Even on bad days. Especially on bad days. You will not always feel strong. You will not always feel clear. You will not always feel confident. But you can still choose one act of self-respect. And one act becomes evidence. Evidence becomes trust. Trust becomes identity. Identity becomes a life. So the next time you feel motivated, do not worship the feeling. Use it. Let it point you toward the work. But do not depend on it to carry you. Because the person you are trying to become is not waiting inside another video. Another quote. Another perfect morning. Another burst of emotion. That person is waiting inside the choice you keep avoiding. And the dark truth is this. Motivation feels good because it shows you who you could be. But discipline hurts because it asks you to bury who you have been. That is why it feels so heavy. You are not just building habits. You are grieving an old identity. The lazy self. The scared self. The people-pleasing self. The version of you that survived through avoidance, excuses, and comfort. You do not need to hate that version. Maybe it protected you once. But you cannot let it lead you forever. At some point, growth becomes a quiet funeral for the person you no longer want to be. And a quiet promise to the person you are becoming. So do not wait for motivation to save you. It was never meant to save you. It was only meant to wake you up. Now you have to get up. Not perfectly. Not dramatically. Not for applause. Just honestly. Choose one promise. Keep it today. Then keep it again tomorrow. That is how a person changes. Not in one emotional moment. But in 100 private decisions where they finally stop abandoning themselves. And maybe that is the real beginning. Not the day you feel powerful. But the day you do what is right while still feeling weak. Because that is the day weakness stops being your identity. If this helped you see yourself differently, subscribe for more deep psychology and self-improvement lessons.